The views and opinions expressed here are those of the guests and are not the official position of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
We believe in God, the Eternal Father.
We believe in the Bible to be the Word of God.
We believe in being honest, true, chaste, benevolent, virtuous.
We believe that through the atonement of Christ, all mankind
We also
will
believe the
by
Book of Mormon to be the Word
Lord.
of God.
We may say that we follow the admonition of Paul. We believe all things. We hope all things. We have endured many things.
Welcome to Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. I'm Rebecca Cressman, and today we'll be talking about integrity and ethics with William Child. He's a former CEO of R.C. Willey Home Furnishings and the current chairman. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, Rebecca. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I think about the early years of R.C. Willey, and it began with your father-in-law, Rufus Call Willey. And his start into the furniture business actually began in the electricity business. Tell me a little bit about how he got his first start.
Well, in the early days of Davis County and Weber County, of course, they were starting to electrify. A company called Utah Power and Light had just started to put power into those particular rural areas. And R.C., as they called him, he was a young, strong man, and he had started working for the power company. He never finished high school, but started working for the power company and climbing poles and stringing wire and doing things of that nature. And as he got a little bit older, he decided that, maybe there's something more that I could do than hard labor. And so he advanced up with the power company, became a station manager at Farmington Canyon. They had one of the resources there which relayed the power into the Farmington area. And he would attend a company to buy parts called Graybar Electric, and they were the Hot Point appliance distributor.
Many people remember that, the Hot Point appliances.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how he first had contact with his very first appliance.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, once they put electricity into these rural areas, they used it basically for lights, and hardly any of them realized that they could keep the food cold and put an electric range in and be able to turn a switch and have instant heat, be able to prepare meals quickly without the old coal-burning stoves. And obviously there was no air conditioning at that time. And even in the rural areas, there wasn't a lot of ice. In the cities, ice was delivered almost daily to keep things cold. But out in the rural farm areas, there wasn't much of that type of delivery. And
so there were ice boxes, neither were refrigerators. This is that pivotal time of the Wild West.
Very difficult to keep food safe and preserve it in any way. And normally the meat would be salted, put on the north side of the house. Milk would be put in a well, and that was basically it. But R.C. Willey first decided that he saved enough money to put a refrigerator into his wife Helen's house, and after he had been married for a couple of years, and it was delightful, and it was the talk of the town. Everybody come to look at it. It was quite exciting.
You can imagine. So everybody's coming in to go to the Willey house to go see this newfangled appliance.
The idea came to him, well, maybe I could sell these appliances or these refrigerators. And then, of course, they also had the electric ranges. He said, maybe I could sell those and make a few dollars, and that might supplement my income. So he made an arrangements with a gentleman by the name of Dick Gailey, who was the president of Barnes Bank and Company, which was a very strong bank in Kaysville at the time, and was able to borrow money to buy his first appliance. And then he set up a little line of credit where he could buy other appliances. He would go to Graybar, pick up parts, load a refrigerator on his truck, and come out and put it in a farmer's home. It wasn't easy to get it in the home. The farmer would say, well, I don't have any money. I can't pay you. And R.C. would say, well, you do have a money when your crops come in, and you could just pay it. We'll put you on what we call the farm plan. You pay 1/3 this year, 1/3 next year, 1/3 the following year. And these appliances at that time were certainly not expensive. $200 was a very expensive refrigerator. $230 or $240 was an expensive electric range.
But he approached the financing in a principle that the farmers could relate to. You pay for your grain, you pay for your seed 3 times a year, you'll pay for your appliance the same way.
The same way when the harvest comes in. Well, he would put the appliance in, and he'd say, use it a week or two, and if you don't like it, I'll come and get it. I just want you to use it. Well, obviously, the wife would never let the appliance go out of the house. He never counted on picking one up or having one returned. They were instant automatic sales once they were used. The housewife didn't realize how much she loved that appliance, how much she had missed by not having them. So it was something that he could do very profitably. And, of course, pretty soon he decided it was easier than working for the power company, so he did this to make a living, and he made a very good living. He never particularly worried about making a lot of money. If he could make $10 or $15 on an appliance, that was actually 3 or 4 days' wages, and he could sell one almost every day, and that was his goal, was to sell 1 or 2 a day.
Many people are familiar with R.C. Willey buildings and storefronts all along the Wasatch Front, but in the early days he was selling these outside of his house.
He just had a pickup truck and a double-car garage, and he did this for actually 18 years. And then in 1949, this started out right shortly after 1932. In 1949, the Korean War was on, and his business got better and better, and his competitors started complaining that he was undercutting him. He was selling too cheap. And so consequently, the distributor came to him and said, R.C., we have a problem. We can't sell you unless you acquire a store.
Everybody else had stores, and they wanted you to have a storefront too.
He had to be a legitimate merchant, so he either had to build one, he had to rent one, or buy one. And normally it was an uptown situation because he lived in rural Syracuse, which was a town of a little over 300 people at that particular time. And he, of course, was very reluctant to do it because he didn't want to. He knew he had to go out and sell the product. He had never done any advertising. He had gone to the customers' homes, been very successful, saved the customers a lot of money. But anyway, he was forced to build a store. And so he and the rep that sold him, not wanting to lose the account or the business, decided that they would build a store right next to his house.
Still out in the farmland
right
of
out
Syracuse.
In the farmland. You know, I mean, a rural, right next to a corn patch. He had to take a little bit of the corn patch in order to put the store up.
Now, you said the representative didn't want to lose his business, and that is because R.C. was one of the top salesmen in the West. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was doing extremely well. He was selling as many appliances as a lot of the uptown merchants.
What was that about his character that made him such a successful salesman?
Well, he was a great salesman. He just knew how to handle people. He was honest. He was very fair with them. He was generous. He was just very difficult to turn down. I can see these farmers. In fact, my own father, I can remember him following Rufus around saying, Rufus, I can't afford this. I don't know why you're putting it in. We don't need this electric range. I think it was electric range at the time. He said, well, you didn't need the refrigerator when we put it in, but you let your wife use it. She deserves this electric range. So he put it in, and consequently he had to wire it up. And when she started using it, I mean, it was just like manna from heaven. There was no way that she would let it go because we had 3 hot meals a day. And I can remember when the thrashers would come, we'd be thrashing. She'd be cooking for 10 or 15 people, and the house would be hot. It would be hot outside, but the house would be hotter, and there was no way to cool it down. And those coals and those old coal stoves just kept heating and heating unless you couldn't take the coals out hardly. But electric range, you could turn it on. You had heat. You turn it off. You didn't have it.
You mentioned an interesting character trait of Rufus, of your father-in-law, and you said he was honest. And I know there's an anecdote about how far his word carried, and that once when he was flying on a trip with his wife, as he was always making sales pitches, he made a pitch to a stewardess on the plane and followed through. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, he didn't realize she lived in Hawaii, and she was willing to buy electric range or a washer and a dryer, as I recall. And when he got back and figured out how far, how hard, and how expensive it was going to be to get that washer and dryer to Hawaii, it was going to cost him considerably more than what he was ever going to make on it, or even more than the cost of the appliances themselves. But he'd made a commitment, and he kept it. He sent them to her and had a happy customer in Hawaii.
So his word was important to him,
Very
keeping
important.
his commitment to the community.
Yes.
So that was one of the keys to Rufus's success.
That was one of his major keys, yes.
Plus,
definitely.
you said he was a natural salesman.
Oh, he was very likable, and everybody liked him, and they knew he was one terrific salesman. He actually enjoyed selling and making the sale more than even what he was going to make on the sale. And normally, many times, it was very little. He just wanted to get those appliances out. And, of course, the electric company wanted to get them out into customers' homes. And the appliance manufacturers wanted them to be put into use. So he was a win-win situation all the way around. The distributor who at that time distributed Hot Point were really excited about him because he paid his bills. He made sales every day. He had hardly no overhead, and that's why he could sell so cheap for such a low price.
When did you first meet him or become close to him? We all know the story that you eventually married one of his daughters.
Yes, I met his daughter, who was an absolute beautiful girl, and I think I was a junior in high school, and met her and kind of thought she was very attractive, and she was a couple of years younger than I was, and so I wasn't as interested as maybe I should have been when I really realized how lovely and beautiful she was. But we kept touch and started dating a little bit, and pretty soon we were very regular dating. She wouldn't date anyone else after she started dating me, and I kept saying, well, look, we're too young, really, to get married or anything. And I was going on a mission, and I had wanted to go to college, and I was going to Weber State for a year, but she still wouldn't date anyone else. And I can remember when we very first started dating, her older sister was getting married, and so they were having a reception in the house. And I went over to the house reception, and I'd only been dating her for 5 or 6 months. But I can remember as I went through, he was telling some guy behind me, that's my future son-in-law. That's my future son-in-law. And I thought, wow, have I made that commitment already?
And you know how persuasive Rufus could be.
Yes,
once he had his eyes on a deal.
He did like me, and I loved him. He was just as close to me as my own father, and I learned so much from him. Well, anyway, I went to first year at Weber State, and then we got married. I was in the Naval Reserve Officers Training Program, and after the first year, I transferred down to the University of Utah and transferred into the ROTC program. But in the meantime, after we were married, I think about 11 months, here comes a little one along, which we weren't exactly planning on, but there it was, and it was, wonderful. And so time I finished at the University of Utah, we had 2, and the military didn't want me with 2 children, and so I thought that was great. In the meantime, I was planning on going on a mission, but the Korean War came along, and they said, well, look, you can't go on a mission until you have completed your military service. So I, of course, was planning on, the officer training program and going into the military. But then when we had 2 children, the military didn't want me either. So the day I graduated from the University of Utah, June 1st, 1954, R.C. Willey handed me the keys to the building, and he said, would you take care of this? And by the way, we had just built the store. He was forced to build a store, and he built it right next to the house. As I said, in the corn patch, he had the power, electric power, run from the house to the store, a 9-party telephone line. In those days, you never had a private line of any kind. 9 parties ran from the house to the store, and he had no bathroom facilities, no water in the store. He had a floor furnace, cinder block walls, 600 square feet, 20 by 30. But he was a merchant, and he found that people came because they would rather have a choice of 4 or 5 refrigerators or 6 rather than the one on the back of his pickup truck.
So they'd stroll through the room.
So they'd come in.
So your graduation gift was a hand welcoming you into the family business just temporarily. He just said, watch the store.
Just for a week while he was taken care of.
Because you had hoped to become a teacher.
Yes, I'd already had a contract to teach school at North Davis Junior High School. And
so you found yourself putting the chalk away for a little bit and running the business.
Well, when he came back in about a week, he was going to be gone for, he came back in about 3 days or 4 days. He was going to be gone for about a week. And I had run the business. He had, in the meantime, hired one employee. He had one employee, a great employee by the name of Lamar Sessions, who has since just passed away at 96. He delivered and repaired, and R.C. Willey sold out of the little store. And he found that people did come, and a lot of those people he'd sold appliances in the past came out, and his business grew. And, of course, during the Second World War, you couldn't get appliances. They were rationed like shoes were, and sugar and gasoline and everything else. But so people thought during the Korean War this might happen again, and so business increased considerably. A lot of people said, well, let's replace the old refrigerator. Let's replace the old electric range. Automatic washers were just coming on, and they were marvelous.
Rather than the Ringer style.
Than the old Maytag square tub.
Were you feeling overwhelmed at that fact of running an entire store?
Well, it was, we had about 20 customers a week, and it wasn't huge, but, yeah, it was overwhelmed because I took every phone call. I scheduled everybody to come in. I helped them and tried to use R.C. Willey's rate of sale, so I tried to sell everybody that came in, and I'd set up the deliveries and so forth and ran it for about 3 or 4 days. And then R.C. Willey came back, and when I went into the house, as I noticed the car drove in, and the house was right next to the store, by the way. They were right adjoining. We knew he wasn't well, and we knew he'd been sick for some time.
He thought he had ulcers, right?
Thought he had an ulcer, and that's what he was going to go take care of. But instead, it was cancer of the pancreas, which we didn't find out until a little bit later. But anyway, after about 3 days, he went into the hospital, and he never really came out. So there I was with the keys, the checkbook. We had a business that was excellent as far as having great reputation and a good customer base, but we didn't have any capital. We were deeply in debt. We had banknotes that were due that weren't paid, and of course the bank was kind of concerned that R.C.'s gone. Now what's going to happen with this young 22-year-old kid? He doesn't know anything about the business, and they owe us for a warehouse we just built. We'd had a fire. We owed the bank $9,000. We had all these contracts that were full recourse, meaning that if the customer didn't pay, the dealer had to pay. And a lot of them were very delinquent because banks were not very good collectors. And and then, of course, we had a red bank account. I started writing checks shortly after that. And I looked at the bank accounts to see where I was, and there was no register keeping track of any balance or anything. But I looked, and all the last bank statements were all in the red. I thought, well, they must have a loan set up. So I started paying bills, people who were clamoring for checks and invoices to be paid. And I got a very abrupt call from the banker, the old banker, Mr. Gailey, had gone to Europe. And the new president-to-be was in charge and seeing all these checks come through and with Bill Child's signature on them, William H. Child, and which I had the authority to do. However, it wasn't R.C. Willey, and he was very concerned. And so he obviously calls us and wants us to come over. And he's given me a phone call to start with and said, Mr. Child, you know that you cannot write checks on an account if you don't have money in that account. And I said, well, I thought we had money in the account, but I thought really that the bank had set up some kind of a loan, because I told him about the bank statements in the past, how they were in the red and constantly in the red. I mean, the last 3 or 4 were, deeply in the red. And he said, well, that was between Mr. Gailey and Mr. Willie, but that's not between Barnes Bank and Bill Child.
Ooh, what a chapter for you to inherit.
Yes.
I'm Rebecca Cressman, and you're listening to Why I Believe in Integrity on the Mormon Channel. We're speaking with Bill Child, the chairman of R.C. Willey Home Furnishings, and going back to a time that must have been overwhelming for you. So that banking relationship you were starting was not a good one.
It was, no, it really wasn't a good one. And I admired the bank. They were doing what they're supposed to do. And they wanted me and my mother-in-law to come in, and so we went in and chatted with them. And this was back many, many years ago, 1956, probably 55. It was probably closer to 1955 spring. And he said, Helen, that was my mother-in-law's name. He said, you got to let this boy go teach school, and you got to close that bill, sell it, and close that business. He said, it's out in the country, and who's going to shop out in the country, and you just better, and then let's get some of these bills paid. You're responsible for all these bills that need to be paid, and we need to bring the company up current and so forth. And when we left, she says, well, maybe that's what we ought to do. And I said, well, I think we have a little problem. I says, number one, we don't have anything to sell. The company's deeply in debt. We have a warehouse we owe $9,000, and it's on the property of the house. It isn't even the property of the store. I said, we have a pickup truck, and we have an inventory that's very not paid for. I said, we don't really have any money. And I said, if we sell, what can we sell?
Well, you're a man of faith. Did that play into it? Did you get on your knees,
I knew
or where did you get your
we had one
answers?
asset, and that was the fact that he had helped and sold a lot of customers. And at the time, believe it or not, his best year had just passed. We were doing almost $250,000 a year in sales. It had slipped a little bit since he was sick, but that was quite a bit of business at that time. But he wasn't making a lot of money on the $250,000, and he was supporting a lot of people. His son-in-law, giving me a little money. I was working for him. He had one employee, and when you looked at it, he really was going in the hole almost for the last 2 or 3 years. But he had a good relationship with the bank, and he would buy $10,000 worth of appliances and get 120 days to pay for them through the manufacturer, and he'd have them sold in 30. So he would have that money to work on for the next 90 days, and he did. And then he'd buy another $10,000 and get 90 days to pay for those. So his cash flow was great. But it was a decision that we had to make, and of course, I knew if we closed the business, someone would not get paid. The bank definitely would not get paid, and one employee that I was concerned with, and the reputation that he had built was very precious to us. He had built a good reputation. So I felt like I called the banker and I said, I hate to give you this bad news, but I says, we don't have any assets. And if you close us down, you're not going to get anything. But if you let me operate and continue and go along with us, I'll guarantee that we'll pay everything that is owed to the bank. And he hum-hoed around a little bit, but he finally said, well, okay, we'll think about it. So I never did get a negative answer.
And then you move forward.
And
when you looked open the books,
yeah.
you started to realize even though you're having good cash flow, you also have a lot of people not fulfilling their debts. Was it almost a third of the customers who were not paying for the appliances?
Well, a lot of those contracts, R.C. Willey never checked anybody's credit.
It's hard to imagine that, but those were the days.
Yep. And then, too, a lot of them were on the farm plan, meaning that if a person happened to buy something in January, they didn't have to pay for it until December. The whole year had gone. And then a day or two later, that was delinquent. But it was a year delinquent because it hadn't been paid. And people's financial situation was changing at that time considerably. They weren't like they were previously 20 years where everybody's word was their bond.
But R.C. Willie believed in that.
He
if
believed
someone
him. He
said
never
that they were
thought
going to pay
anybody
for
would
it,
not, anybody would not pay. And but then, so we started working and doing fairly well, and then the bank would start charging these contracts back to me, and I would have checks out. The banker would call me when the checks hit and say, well, you don't have any, you wrote checks and you didn't have any money. And I said, I did have money. And then I'd go out the mailbox and there'd be 2 or 3 of these contracts. So I'd have to go collect and pick up the goods, or what I tried to do in 90% of the cases, I just refinanced them with another company. And so we got our money and we were okay. But it did take a lot of work and time. My nighttime job was collecting.
Repo man.
Repo man. Yeah,
which
collecting
must
these
have been
contracts.
difficult to do.
It wasn't too much fun, but it usually it worked out. I mean, I was friendly and nice.
What is the story about you had such a great family reputation in the community when one of the families was preparing to move out of town and another neighbor knew they were defaulting on an appliance? You got a phone call.
Yes, he called me. The guy was up at the service station. He had a car that was overheating in a trailer, and he had a freezer on there that he had not paid for. And so he called me and said, hey, if you'll come up. I went right up, and I approached him, and I said, I'll bet you're bringing that freezer down to us, weren't you? And he goes, well, yes. I said, well, I'm going to take it. I'll just load it on my truck here, and we'll take it back, and which I did, and worked out just great.
But as part of your philosophy, you were appealing to the better part of that person.
Right. And it paid off in the run, because we never really were vicious with people. We were never mean. We were always seeing their side of the story, and it was a very positive experience. And then one other situation that came along, my father-in-law was very honest. He was not a bookkeeper. He did have a bookkeeper who we found out later that was very dishonest. And then I get a call from the IRS saying they want to come out and visit with me. And
you heard that dreaded word audit. That's
trouble. Yeah, do an audit on us. And come to find out, the bookkeeper had not been paying income tax. So there we were. And R.C. Willie had been paying the bookkeeper. And, of course, R.C. Willie was in the hospital at this time, just hanging on to...
paying the accountant, assuming that he was paying.
Right, and I had to do all these things myself. I didn't dare go talk to him about it because I didn't want to upset him. It was something that he couldn't do anything about. And so I worked through that. It was kind of an interesting experience. We finally hired the IRS agent. He got permission to come and from the IRS to take our account, because I said, hey, look, I'm just a dumb kid. I don't really understand any of this. All I know is that R.C. Willie was as honest the day is long. I do know this accountant was not honest and is not honest and was taking a lot of money and not paying bills he should have been paying. And I found that to be the case in many other situations.
And is your honesty that convinced that IRS agent to actually come work for you?
To come and work for me, yes. And he worked for us for a long time. He was a wonderful guy. And he saved our business, really.
Do you look at that now as a blessing?
I think it was a blessing. I look at what happened when I had the book written. The author, a fellow by the name of Jeff Benedict, who has written the Mormon Way of Doing Business, an LDS, a good member of the church, said, I'd like to write this book because he said, when you started, you had zero. And then 40 years later, you sell it to the second richest man in the world. Now, he said, there has to be a lot in between that's very interesting and very exciting. And I said, yes, it was a wonderful experience, and it was a tempering experience to start out, in the hole, to start out with a lot of debt. I said, it taught me thrift. It taught me not to go in debt. It taught me I never wanted to have a mortgage on a building, and I never did. We built buildings when we had the money only. We never did mortgage any kind of a building, even when we built the one in Sacramento, the one in Reno, the two in Las Vegas, the one in, Idaho.
Well, and even personally, you inherited the R.C. Willie business. You recognized there were some strong cash flow, but that there was a problem with debt. And then you were steadfast. And you and your wife, was it within just 2 years, paid off your own home mortgage? Or?
Well, it was, yes, we did. In a couple of years, I had been raising beef cattle and had enough money to put me through school. And my dad was we didn't go for them for money, but he would give me cattle, and we would raise them, take a little calf and raise it up, and then we'd sell them at the stock shows, and we'd get a very premium price for them. So I could make $100, $200 on a cow or a calf, a beef that we would take to these shows. And I did this for a number of years. So I actually had money in the bank when I was married, and I had money in the bank, and I'd been paying income tax for quite some time, believe it or not.
But you were still frugal. That money was there,
yes,
and
it was there,
used it wisely.
Right. We just, knew that I wanted to get a college education. It was very important, number one, because I didn't want to farm. Farming was so risky in a way. You couldn't control the cost of the product.
Couldn't control always the crop that you harvested.
Crops and the weather, and it was a lot of hard work. It seemed like there was never anything. You never finished. You were never done. We had milk cows. You had to milk them every night and every morning. And we were up at 5 a.m. out milking these cows before you had to go anywhere.
But it taught you hard work.
It did.
In the beginning of your story, you're married to Darlene, and you had a wonderful, happy marriage for 14 years.
14 wonderful years.
4 beautiful children. And you lost her as she died from a blood clot at that point. When you talk about your life and its experiences that tempered you, that experience too came, though the company was now starting to be much more profitable, that was a personal loss for you.
It was. I mean, we had, we would become on a very solid, sound foundation. Business was good. We'd hired 2 or 3 salespeople. We'd expanded the store a couple of times right out in Syracuse. And we were, through a lot of hard work and frugality, we had done quite well. And then, of course, this tragedy happened. She was a beautiful girl and never been sick, and actually forgiving and loving. I didn't treat her as well as that was one of my big regrets, because I was working and not spending as much time with her. She was raising the kids, and in the meantime, we had 4 children, and I'd come home for dinner, and I worked just down the street. I mean, I could run and get home in 5 minutes, but there was always something to do at the store, and there was always customers coming in, and we stayed, open late, and seems like there was always challenging. We had to pay for an expansion, and we had to pay this or pay for that, and so we were trying to build the business and grow it, and I hired a few more people, and of course, when you had those people, then it was a financial responsibility to meet payroll, and so it was a growing experience. And she was just the perfect wife for that circumstances. But that's one of my regrets, is not spending more time, because she was absolutely a wonderful, just a spiritual giant.
I'm sorry for your loss. I know that losing her, in the book, the author writes about how you tried to balance the business and the needs of your children as a widower.
Yeah, that was very difficult. In fact, my mother said, Darlene was just too good to be here. She's just too good to be here, and the Lord just had to have her. And I have a tendency to think about that a little bit. We obviously wanted to have another child, and she did very badly, and obviously for some reason or other, couldn't get pregnant after our last child, who was 8 years old when she passed away. But anyway, we had 4 lovely children, and when she died, I thought my life had ended almost. I thought, oh, what do I do? But you go on. You just pick it up, and away you go. And you know that the good Lord will bless you, and He continued to do so. And as I was thinking back, I would think, well, you have been really blessed. I mean, you've got a wonderful wife that you'll have forever, and you got 4 great kids. And within 2 years, your life was blessed again with another woman, Patricia,
a
beautiful gal, and no, she never had any children, or had never been married again, and she was willing to take on 4 children, which I thought was miraculous. I thought, boy, if she'll do that, she's got to be some kind of a gal.
Well, reading about her, she had set some goals. I was never going to live out in the farmlands. I was never going to marry someone who'd been married before, nor someone who had children, and yet she fell in love with you and fell in love with your family.
I was a good salesman. And we've been married for 43 years. We just had our birthday celebration, a surprise party for her. She was absolutely shocked. I mean, it just thrilled her to no end to have that, all those people. We had about 125 that showed up. Had it up at the University of Utah, Rice-Eccles Stadium,
and together you've had 4 more children.
And we have 4 more children.
Well, family has been a theme. I mean, you're raising a growing family of 8 children. But eventually, as you get the R.C. Willey Company into the black, you start looking for more help. And you didn't have to go far. You looked right behind you to your younger brother.
Yes.
Who stepped in, Sheldon.
My younger brother was very instrumental in the success of our company. He was terrific. He wanted to be a teacher also. But he started selling, and he had such a knack for it, and he was so good at it. And people just flocked to him, and he did so well. And then he eventually came into the management. We worked 32 years together. And, I mean, we had times when we didn't always agree, but we never had any major disagreements.
You agreed on principles.
We agreed on principles.
And on philosophy.
And there was some things that he'd say, I don't think we ought to buy that. It probably won't sell. And sometimes he was right. Sometimes he wasn't right. I would say, okay. But I think I will. But
he allowed you to move into the more administrative role while he took over the sales.
He took over the sales.
Well, over the years, as you two worked together, 32 years, and as you say, he was magnetic personality.
Yes,
people were
he was.
Just drawn to him.
Yeah.
You started to agree on principles that were important to you, some of them that you inherited from your father-in-law in terms of treating people as you would like to be treated. But I'd like to go over some of those management principles and philosophies with you and have you discuss them with us. First of all, I'll go back to the very thought that I brought up, that Rufus had set up this principle: treat every customer the way you wanted to be treated. How did that influence the way that you and Sheldon did business?
We just felt that was the only way you could possibly do business. We were doing business in smaller communities, and they were people that we would run into on a daily basis or at church on Sunday. And we did not want any hard feelings of any kind. We would rather go the extra mile. Even though some of the products we didn't build, we didn't build any of the products. We were just, merchants. We were agents for our customers, but some of them were not up to the quality that they should have been at that particular time. And it's amazing how the companies and the product have gotten so much better today. In the last 15, 20, 30 years, product is so much better. We used to have televisions that you would have to plug it in the store and run it for an hour or two before you ever took it out to the customer's home. And then you tell them not to turn it on if it was cold, but if they turned it on, it might go out, and the next day it would go out or something. And
I remember the days you had to give your TV a good pounding to get it to turn on.
Yes.
But there's a great example of that. In one of the product lines, when you're talking about treating every customer the way you want to be treated, doing the right thing, you had an appliance that you were selling to customers that had a defective component. And you stood by that product even when the company did less so.
Yes. Well, it's just I think we were raised that way, and I think that was a philosophy. We just felt like we don't want anyone not to get their value and anyone not to get their money's worth. And you mentioned we sold an awful lot of automatic washers. They were really a very hot seller. And Hot Point came out with a new washer. And it had what they call they had an old washer. Their first washer out was a fluid drive mechanism, because if the washer had to spin at a certain amount of RPMs in order to dry the clothes, so that you could put them in a dryer and it wouldn't take all day, or you could take them out and hang them out. And,
sure, the spinning cycle.
Yeah, the spinning cycle was very important. Well, they finally made a change to a new mechanism, and it was a centrifugal clutch that was supposed to work much better and longer and so forth. Well, it went out in about 9 months, and the warranty was a year. And so we started finding quite a few defects. So anyway, pretty soon I realized, we got a problem here. Went back to the manufacturer, and, you're the only one that's having that trouble, and nobody else is complaining and so forth. Denial. You find that even today in some major companies.
And that goes against your principles, your values.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I said, well, so we took care of them. They furnished the parts. We had to do the labor, which was major. But in the meantime, I had to hire another repairman to come in, and because Lamar Sessions was just overwhelmed. He couldn't deliver and repair at the same time, and he just didn't have enough hours in the day to take care of these complaints we were having with this automatic washer. So anyway, we hired another gentleman who did a wonderful job in coming in and repairing, and got along fine. But it seems like after the warranty, the company wouldn't furnish the parts, and so we had to decide, do we want to buy these parts, which were expensive. I think we made about $40 on selling the washer, and these parts were something like $31 or $2, and it's a couple hours to repair them. And so we decided, well, we got to do it anyway, because the customer has not gotten a good value, and they need to have a part, an appliance that functions properly. They didn't buy it for 1 year or year and a half. A lot of these people put hard-earned money in it, and they expect it to last 5 or 6 or 7 years. So anyway, as we were going along, replacing these parts, and then we realized, much to our surprise, not surprise, but
chagrin,
shock, that the parts they were giving us were the same dumb parts that they put in the first place.
Just as defective as the original
parts. And they
parts.
were just as defective. So here we were, stuck again. So we went on and pretty much replaced all those parts. It took us a year and a half to get through it and take care of them, and it was a very costly thing. We made very little money that year that we did that, but we did it, and we felt like we should do it because it was the right thing to do. And I don't think we'd have felt good, meeting someone on the street or in church, and they'd say, well, I bought that washer, but it went out a year and a half, and so I had to go buy another one. I didn't come back and buy it from you. And
so your principle was, when treating people the way you wanted to be treated, you wanted to be able to look them in the eye.
In the eye. Well, we just felt like it was very crucial.
Well, Bill, isn't there another example of the type of integrity you had to have as a company when you had to assume the warranties of some of your products?
Well, yes. That is rather an interesting situation. A lot of our competitors were selling warranties on appliances, what they would call as additional warranties, extended warranties on appliances and electronics. And our customers were asking for them, so we decided we would sell them. And there was one company out of the Midwest called Electronic Warranty Corporation, and they were providing all these warranties. It was kind of like an insurance policy. For example, we would charge someone $100 to extend the warranty on their television for another 3 years, and we would sell that warranty to Electronic Warranty Corporation, and then they would refund us, or we would keep 40% of it. So they would take it and do it for the 60%. We would collect 40%. So it was a very lucrative situation. Well, we did this for a number of years, and most everybody else in Utah was using them also. And then all of a sudden, they started to slow up in paying the service provider. And I got a little nervous about it. And so I sent my chief financial officer back to the factory just to check to see if they were solvent or, why they were slow in paying the service people. In other words, if someone had a complaint, they would not call, I don't remember where it was, Wisconsin or whatever. They would call them, but they would call a local appliance repair department, and then they would go out and fix it. And then the Electronic Warranty Corporation would pay the repair department. So R.C. Willey was pretty much off the hook, and every other company was. So they were a little slow in doing this, and so I kind of held up some payments to them and sent our chief financial officer back, and he went back, and he came back, and he said, well, I think they're okay. They wined him and dined him and, and showed him all the good stuff. And he said, now, I have to tell you, I think if their business ever slowed down, they could be in trouble. But it seems to be really perking and doing well. And so I think we're okay. So we released a check for $192,000 or $3,000. In the meantime, they'd paid all these service agencies up. And then about 4 days later, we got the news that they had declared bankruptcy. One of the states had said you don't have enough reserve, and consequently it had disbarred them from that state. And obviously it was they were living high, spending a lot of money they didn't have, And they were getting a lot of money coming in, but they didn't reserve enough for these repairs that were going to happen in the past. So anyway, one of the TV reporters, Mary Nichols, I think it was Mary Nichols, came out, and she called me and said, I understand that you've been funding through Electronic Warranty Corporation, and they've gone bankrupt. What are you going to do about it? I said, just without asking anybody, I said, well, I guess we'll have to step in and be the insurer. We'll have to take care of our customers. She said, will you say it on television? And I said, well, I'm not excited about it, but sure. So she comes out. I'd already committed to her, yes, we're going to take care of all our customers. Comes out, has her television guy with her, sticks a mic in my face. She said, oh, Mr. Child, R.C. Willey, such and such, what are you going to do about Electronic Warranty Corporation going bankrupt with all these warranties you've sold and all that have been sold across the country? I said, well, we will step in and take care of every warranty that has been sold through R.C. Willey Company. We'll back the insurer. We will be the insurer. No matter what it costs us, we'll take care of them. And she went on and said, well, that's quite a comment. When she got off the air, I said, well, what's our competitors going to do? And she said, well, some of them said we'll do it case by case. Some of them said, well, we can't step in and take that. It's like buying an insurance policy. Insurance company goes broke. The agent can't pay.
So you were the only company to say you would honor all of the warranties?
The only one that said we would do it all to her. So that's why she came out and got us to do it. Well, it actually, over the next 5 years, cost us $1.5 million. But it was something we needed to do. Some people asked and said, did it improve your business or did it help your business? I said, well, it certainly didn't hurt it. And it was very nice when customers called to say, we'll take care of it. You get it repaired and send us the bill.
So the return on investment there was
probably very good. We did some surveys later, along with other surveys we're doing about how we were doing our business. And the guy that did the survey said, well, you didn't get your money's worth out of it, but I said, but it was the right thing to do. And we would do it again in a heartbeat. And
you got peace out of mind.
So we got peace of mind. And then, of course, our business continued to grow, and we continued to expand. And then we decided that we maybe should move into Salt Lake City. 2/3 of the business of the state of Utah was done in Salt Lake Valley, and maybe 50% of it, and I think maybe 25% in northern Utah, and maybe 25% Provo and southern Utah. So, but 50% was basically in Salt Lake Valley, and so we needed to be there, and we finally decided to expand, and we've expanded into a wonderful location in Murray that worked out very well. It was kind of out in the country at the time, and everybody thought we were nuts doing so, but it worked out fine. And it gave us a lot of experience in managing 2 stores from a distance. And when we had one store, we could walk out in the warehouse. We had everybody under control. We could watch if this wasn't doing right and that way. But here we are kind of having to be absentee managers in a way, and it taught us a lot. But it was a great learning experience.
When you say taught us a lot, I know that one of the different philosophies you had from Rufus is that you have learned the importance of delegation.
Yes, it taught us
And so by once the business grew to expand into other locations, you had to trust the right people. And that brings us to one of your management principles, where you say hiring the right personnel is as key as anything else, and you hire by character and less about the resume.
That's right. Definitely. We're in the people business, and you had to hire people that had integrity and that were competent, of course, and that were willing to work hard and to do the job. But you really had to learn to delegate to them, and you had to rely on numbers, and you had to rely on people doing the thing. So you couldn't walk out on the floor if there was no salespeople and there were customers there. You had to rely on management that would take care of all that. And of course, once we first got into, a dozen stores, that was a good lesson, because so many times people just never are able to move from that first little one-man operation to a larger facility, being able to succeed. It's not as easy as it sounds to turn things over because you think you can do it better than anyone else can do it. And not really so sometimes, but at least that's what you think.
So you set out the policies and the philosophy, and then you hired the people that would live that. So you were trying to live by that legacy of honesty that Rufus left.
Yes, definitely.
Then Sheldon came in.
Yep. Sheldon came in, of course, and Sheldon, same parents, and just as honest as the day is long, and high integrity, and willing to work hard and long. And so our philosophies were basically the same. And most of the people, or 90% of the people we hired, had the same philosophy. They had high integrity. I think one of our gal employees was a gal by the name of Faye Hansen, and a wonderful lady. She had 5 sons. Her husband was one of my best friends, and just wonderful people. But her integrity was so great. I mean, she just was so honest, and if a company would overship us, she knew what to do. She would call them and say, look, you sent us an extra 5, or you've made a mistake on this invoice, and you billed us for $2,500, and it should have been $250,000.
And the integrity is manifested in the details of our lives.
It is. And most of our manufacturers would come and have been told me lately, they said, we love to do business with you because you never bill us for things that we don't think are really legitimate. And you never ask for parts that you don't. Many times you'll say, we broke it, we want to pay for it. I said, nobody does that. He says, you're 1 in a million. And I said, well, it's our Mormon culture that we just want to treat our suppliers the same way we want to treat our customers, with honesty and fairness and integrity.
Well, and you bring that up, that your LDS faith informed the type of philosophy that you created. One of the management principles you have is service ahead of profits. We understand, of course, that service is something that church members are actively giving to their neighbors, to their community members, and to their parishioners, their ward members as well. But you incorporated that into your business.
Well, we felt like if we could find a good buy on a product, we'd like to pass the value on to the consumer. We weren't interested in making an enormous amount of profit. We wanted to make enough profit so we could continue to be solid and sound and expand. And we wanted to do it by buying right, number one, and number two, being efficient and working hard. But we wanted to be more competitive. We didn't want anyone to pay any more for a product at our store than anywhere else. And normally we wanted them to be able to pay less because our overhead was less. We had that, we call it the country location, or the efficiencies that we developed with our first 2 stores. And so that really endeared our customers to us. And if we took care of them, and then it was a personal thing in many cases. We knew our customers by name and knew what we'd sold them.
And they would return to you over and over again. You mentioned that your suppliers were surprised by your honesty, by your company's honesty. And you were looking to keep that climate of honesty within all of your personnel. Right.
When things got tough and merchandise got scarce, we were one of the first to get it. If there was an offer or a deal to be made that they could give us a better deal, they gave it to us first. So we had terrific. It's sort of like, we haven't talked about closing on Sunday, but by being closed on Sunday, we actually got some terrific employees that would come and want to work for us. And we could hire people that didn't want to work on Sunday, members of the church that would say, I've been in the furniture business and I've had to work on Sunday. And so when we moved into Las Vegas, I think we had probably, that first store, we may have had 8 or 10 members of the church that were in Bishop Briggs, a couple of members of the stake presidency, 1 stake president. I think we had about 3 bishops at one time working for us. And they would just gravitate because you didn't stay open on Sundays.
But that was contrary to the advice people had for the furniture business. They would say you'd have to stay open on Sundays.
Well, that's right. And when we finally sold it to Mr. Buffett, that was what he thought. He felt like he thought we could do it in Utah. We couldn't do it anyplace else. He said, you can't do it in other cities. He said, you can't give that much business to your competitor. And he owned a store in Nebraska called the Nebraska Furniture Mart. It's a huge store. They had 1,700 parking places. And on Sunday, he'd go down. Markets were all closed. He'd go down to do his shopping, and you'd have a hard time finding a parking place. And it was one of their biggest days of the week. And that's why he says, Bill, you can't expand out of state and be closed on Sunday. You just can't do it. There's no way. I've asked all your friends, and they said no. That was what we wanted to move into Las Vegas. We wanted to expand because we had about 60% of the business in furniture in the state of Utah and a little over 30% of the appliance electronic business. And it was hard to grow and get too much more. And so we did want to expand. And I looked at the Las Vegas market, which had been a tremendously successful and fast-growing market, as you probably all know. It grew rapidly for 10 or 15 years. And I kept thinking my only problem is that we're too late to go. And one day we flew over Las Vegas in a helicopter. I'd arranged to be in Vegas to meet Warren. He was going to be there. And we flew over Vegas, looked at all the housetops and rooftops. And I said, look at all this. I said, all these homes need furniture and appliances. And I said, a lot of them haven't, but we should have been here 3 or 4 years ago, but we weren't quite ready. But our systems are ready now, and we can do it. Our RT systems are ready, and our management, we have management that we can replace here, and we can be successful here in Las Vegas. And it's the fastest. Henderson happened to be the fastest growing city in America for 10 years, and so anyway, we flew over Vegas and looked at them, and I pointed out, and I said, now look, see, this is desert here, but 6 months from now, they'll be developing houses. He said, yeah, it's amazing, it's amazing. When we got through, he just said, we're not going. And I said, well, Warren, I know it's probably the Sunday closing, isn't it? He says, yes, it is. He said, we're not going to open on Sunday. Made that commitment to you. And so we're not going to go into a market that we can't be successful and be closed on Sunday. So we're not going to Las Vegas.
So there you are with one of the most, or if not the most successful businessmen in America, if not in the world, Warren Buffett. And he's saying, as much as we can see potential growth in that community, unless you're going to open up on Sundays, Bill, we're not going there.
That's right. And
you stood by your principle. How did you explain that to Warren, why it was so important to you to stay closed on Sunday?
Well, when I had the first conversation with Warren in 1995, I wanted him to come out and look at our operation. And he didn't really, he said, I don't need to do it. He says, I know that with your integrity and the integrity of your company, if you say it's there, it's probably there and more. He said, I don't have to look at it. Well, he wanted us, when we've had our first conversation, and didn't need to sell the company at all. But we'd had 4 or 5 offers, and I had turned them down because I knew that if we sold them, we'd be open on Sunday. And I knew if we sold them, we'd lose control. And it would not be the same R.C. Willey that with our principles that we had built the business on. And so I just decided we weren't going to do it. And then I happened to be thinking about Warren Buffett, who I was with a friend of mine who had bought their company, their family company. And I said, do you think Warren might have an interest? And he says, oh, I'm sure he would. And so he said, I'm going to have dinner with him in a few days. And he said, I'll mention it to him. Well, a couple of days later, I get a phone call from my friend Irvin. He says, Warren's very interested in your business. He's going to call you. And so I said, oh, wonderful. Hung up the phone. About 5 minutes later, here comes the phone call. And it was Warren Buffett. So we talked for a few minutes. And I said, have you got time? I got all the time in the world. And I thought, I really like this guy. I told him how impressed I was that I was talking to one of the richest men in the world and so forth. And he was so easy to talk with. And so I finally, when we hung up, I kind of explained why we thought we maybe would like to sell the company. But we knew that if we sold it to Warren, we'd continue to run it, which means you got your cake and you can eat it too. You can sell it, eat it and still have it. It was just one of those things that is kind of made in heaven.
This is Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. We are speaking with Bill Child, chairman of R.C. Willey, about integrity. We'll be back in just a few moments. Welcome back to Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. We are talking about integrity with Bill Child, chairman of R.C. Willey. How did you deliver the news about the no Sunday policy?
Oh, well, actually, he wanted me to send him 2-3 years financials, a little information, and I sent it to him. And he, of course, sends me a FedEx back and says, you have a jewel of a company. We've been growing at the rate of 17% a year. We had no debt. He liked that. And we've been quite profitable and met his criteria on profitability. And the reason was that we were efficient and we worked hard, and we had no debt, paid our bills, and had great relationships with our consumers. We were innovative, and our business was growing and developing. And so it was something that fit his mold, and he asked me how much I wanted for it. I just told him, I said, it's just a fair price. I said, I want whoever buys it today, if I were to sell it to you today, I'd want you to be just as happy 10 years from now with the operation. I wouldn't want you to be disappointed or upset or feel like you'd gotten cheated in any way. He said, okay. So here comes the FedEx. I'll have you a price in 3 days. In 3 days, here comes the price. And it was about $20 million less than we'd been offered, but what we'd been offered wasn't acceptable because there were too many, ifs and ands. One was, 2 of them were furniture companies that were back east and pretty major. One was Montgomery Ward's. One was a company called Heilig Myers. And then, of course, 3 of them, I think, were investment banking companies. And the minute you sell it to them, you'd have been open on Sunday. And one guy stood on our store out in Murray, and he says, I can see this store all across America. This is a fabulous operation. He said, it's going to be terrific. I said, no, we're closed on Sunday. He said, oh, we'll talk about that later. And so...
And it was a non-negotiable for you.
Yes, very non-negotiable. So when Warren, I insisted on Warren coming out. I called him and I said, it's the price is fair. It was a lot of money, and a few dollars didn't make that much difference to us. We were more interested in the company and its future and our associates, our employees. So when I talked to him, I said, Warren, we got to have you come out and look at it. He said, I don't need to look at it, Bill. And that's when he told me, he said, your integrity is, and he does check people out.
Checks the references, checks the financial statements.
Yeah,
sure.
he knew exactly. And so I said, Warren, I couldn't sell it to you unless you come and looked at it. He said, well, okay. So he was going to play golf with Bill Gates down in Palm Springs. And he said, I can stop by on such. I said, wonderful. So we took him, showed him all the stores, talked about Sunday closing. He said, well, I don't know how you do it, being closed on Sunday, but if you can do it, it's okay with me. That's the deal.
With no questioning of your religious principles?
No, we talked about that. And we said, look, it's not only religious, but we think our church is very family-oriented, and we feel that people... Sunday is a day of rest, and it's a day of worship. It's a day to spend with families, and it's something that we just could not operate our business and be open on Sunday. We just couldn't do it, and we don't need to do it because I said there's one thing we do have to do, Warren. We got to be better than our competition. We got to offer the customer better values and better service, and if we do that, they'll buy from us during the week.
Monday through Saturday.
Monday through Saturday.
This is Why I Believe on the Mormon Channel. We're talking about integrity with Bill Child, the chairman of R.C. Willey Home Furnishings. So Warren Buffett accepts the deal, buys into the company, buys the company. Mm-hmm. You remain in your position as CEO and chairman of the board. And you can look back. You mentioned that you needed to be more competitive than your competition.
Yes.
As you go back and you look at those other management principles that you had, one idea I thought was interesting is you said, grow the company with integrity, constantly improving, never be satisfied with the status quo. You said that R.C. Willey is known for being innovative. What kind of examples of innovation and change?
Well, I can tell you one quick experience. Many years ago, I went back to Chicago. I tried to study as much as I could business and business principles, and I was back to Chicago to Northwestern University. I had a seminar, and I went to a place called Polk City. It was supposed to be the greatest retail organization in the world, And they had stores on both sides of the streets, and it was magnificent. I took all kinds of notes. And about 8 years later, we went back with my brother. And I said, we got to go see Polk City. I went, and guess what? It was exactly the same. They'd never changed a thing. The carpet was the same. The merchandising was the same. And they weren't doing well. The world had changed, but they hadn't. And I've realized, and our stores, by the way, at that time were better than Polk City's. 10 years earlier, our stores weren't nearly as good. We only had the 2 at the time, I think, or even 1. Wasn't nearly as good. But as we kept progressing and never being satisfied, because the world changes. And
so the type of products you sell, the type of displays
the values, the displays. Well, one of the examples, we have what we call the Mountain Retreat, cabins and Western and outdoor rugged type furniture. It's done quite well. We had what we call a New Directions, which is when contemporary moved in a little bit more. We did that. And then, of course, some of our kiosks changed in our electronic area. You walk in there and, oh, my gosh, you just fall in love with the high tech that's there. And a very popular area, trying to stay up with the latest, the newest, and looking all over the country for examples. We're great copiers. If we can find something somewhere else that's being done well, we do it. I used to do quite a bit of moving around and looking at fine stores. Lately, haven't done it because when I do, I find that ours is better than theirs. And you're a hard man to please. Yes. I understand that your employees have felt that you have said it's always good to look forward, to continue to push yourselves towards forward goals, even if you are successful. My wife tells me I don't know what no means. And, and I did have one employee, a wonderful young man, after a sales meeting. We'd had a great year, and I was telling him, I said, now, we have to do better next year. We've got to improve a little bit. And here I think's our goals. I think we can do it, but we can't remain static. If we don't move forward, we're going to move backwards. And if we don't improve and just stay the same, pretty soon we're going to lose our edge, and we won't have all the advantages that we have of having the economy of scales that we have. And one of the salesmen come up afterwards and tears in his eyes, wonderful guy, a terrific friend. And he said, you're never satisfied. He said, I've worked for you for 30 years. You've never been satisfied. What do we have to do to make you satisfied? What can we do? We work our heart out, and then you're still not satisfied. And I just felt awful. I went home that day, and I thought, oh, dear friend told me that I didn't appreciate him. And I did tell him how much they'd done, but you only spend a few minutes on doing that, and then you say, okay, here's our challenges for next year. Because there was always new people coming in, and a lot of them were open on Sunday, especially in the electronic and appliance business. We had Incredible Universe. We had a number of, Circuit City and all
electronic
these
electronic
stores coming
flashy,
right and
sure.
left, one out of Canada. And so anyway, but I got home, and after I thought about it a little while, I said, he's absolutely right. I'm sorry, but that's the way I'm built. I said, I just have to. We need to climb that mountain, and we need to be better. We served a mission for 2 years, just in 2007 and 2008.
You and your wife, Patricia.
Oh, and it was a wonderful experience.
In Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C. We were directors of the Visitor Center. And when I got back there, it was kind of an interesting story. I probably shouldn't do this, but President Hinckley called us. And when he set us apart, the story is rather interesting. I could go on to it, but we really don't have enough time.
President Hinckley, the church president at that time.
At the time. And in fact, he asked me about a year before how long it would take me to get my affairs in order. I said, about a year, President. He said, okay, I got something. About 6 months, I get this letter from him saying, I got a calling for you, and this is what it's going to do, and so forth. I thought, oh, wow. So I started getting, I got involved in a lot of things after I turned the company over to my nephews. But anyway, when he set us apart, I said, President, there are so many others that could do such a great job. I just want to tell you how thankful I am, because this is a wonderful calling. He put his finger on my chest, and he says, Bill, if I thought anybody else could have done a better job, I would have called him. And I thought, oh, dear. So when I got back and learned the routine of running the operation a little bit, and it was wonderful. I mean, and I could see, we're responsible for bringing people in, presenting them, and exposing them to the gospel.
You found parallels.
I'd run a business, and so I was running a visitor center, and we had 36 wonderful, beautiful sisters that we trained and worked with. And
sister missionaries that were there volunteering their time.
Missionaries. And they were fantastic. And we had 3 couples we worked with, and of course we worked with the mission president and all of the others. But anyway, as I was sitting in my office one day, and I thought things were going along pretty good. We had some great programs, and baptisms were going up, and everybody was really excited. We had a lot of displays we'd arranged for and come in, and we felt kind of comfortable in a way. But I got thinking, I thought, there was a reason President Hinckley sent us back here, and I don't know what it is, but there was something extra I've got to do. And so I got thinking, and all at once it came to me, signage around the temple. There had not been any signage to speak of. There was 2 small signs. They were 12 by 14, and they were dark. And one of them was under a tree, and the other one I could never see. And so I said, well, here's what happened. The Lord really provides. A young guy came in by the name of Gar Cranny III, and he was with the National Guard stationed to the Pentagon, but he was single. And he had about 5 or 6 gals that he called them his team. I think they were looking to just associate together. They were, young singles. And I explained this to him, and I said, what do you think? I said, we got to have signage around this temple. I said, I've done some checking and studying, and I've made calls to Matt Christensen, Brother Wright, who was here before.
As many people as you knew who were successful businessmen and women.
That had been back at the temple and been directors. And they all said, you can't do it. I mean, they won't sign you.
The ordinances of the community won't allow more signs?
Well, it was 3 departments we had to go through. One was the Maryland State Highway Department. Another one was the Maryland State Parks and Recreation Department. The other one was the Maryland State Tourism Department. And everybody had applied a number of times, and not everyone, but most of them, and been turned down 2 or 3 times. So here we are, me and Elder Cranny, or Brother Cranny. We decided we're going to take this on. We're going to get it done. And so we had of his team, there was a legal gal with a legal background. There was a graphic artist. There was one that was great on computerization. And, there was another one that had a lot of other talents. There was 5 of them. And this guy was great at writing emails. So we applied, all 3 departments. I looked at all the records in the past, and we got turned down. We applied again, we got turned down. And we'd go back again and say, what can we do? What can we do? The sisters fasted, they prayed, and to make a long story short, I mean, everybody helped. I tried to go to our congressman, who was wonderful back there, but he said, that's a state deal. I can't do you any good at all. We tried to, tap every resource we had.
So that tenacity you had in business, you're putting in play right there for the church's
we weren't going to give up.
Visitor Center.
Well, we finally got actually 8 signs up. We got them on what they call the Belt Route, which is the inner and outer loop. Maybe close to 1 million cars a day travel that. And we got them on Beach Drive, better ones on Beach Drive. We got them on Connecticut, which is the street that goes right into Washington, D.C., and
all the key expressways and roadways around the temple.
Temple. Now you can, it's just wonderful. It actually, we just barely got the last ones put up, even though I got permission before I left the mission in writing. But the last ones just got put up maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And
what did you learn from that?
Rich,
what did you come back with? Was it?
Well, I learned that the Lord is going to provide a way. I mean, He is going to take care of you. If you are willing to work and pay the price, and work hard enough, He's going to provide a way to do it and get it done. He's going to have the people available. And He did. I mean, we couldn't have done it without Gar Cranny. We probably couldn't have done it without those sisters fasting and praying. We couldn't have done it without a lot of these gals that helped, and all these emails. And then we got an advocate back there, a couple of gals that came out. A lot of the people that turned us down had never been to the visitor center, and we got them out there.
So again, you wanted to have that person-to-person experience for them, so they could look you in the eyes and know who you were.
You know, this is legitimate. We need to have people that want to come need to be able to find it, to be able to get here without getting lost. So it was a wonderful experience, and we felt really good. All our sisters were so excited. They were just, when we got those, every time we'd get a sign up. But it's probably a culmination of a lot of people and working hard. And someone just saying, we're going to do this. Cranny said, we're going to do this. We can do it. And he shared my vision, and I shared his. And
you draw upon each other's strengths and resources.
Yeah.
When you look back at the R.C. Willey story, which is still progressing, it's moving on to the days of Warren Buffett.
Yes.
But when you look back at your life with the R.C. Willey Company, as well as Rufus's, what are the lessons you learned from those years of experience?
Well, I think all the decisions that we made, as I look back, were wonderful. Most of them were wonderful decisions. And when I followed the Spirit, when I was listening to that still small voice, those decisions were good. Even though a lot of people said that won't work. When we built the first store in Murray, a lot of people said, that's not where you need to be. You shouldn't be there. That's not it. Well, it was 10 miles south of the center of population, but now it's 10 miles north of the center of the population, so it's right where you need to be. When we went into Idaho, with Warren,
You had another trip with Warren Buffett. Instead of in Vegas, this time you're up in Boise. And did you not put the Sunday principle to test there?
We did. In fact, I kept saying when Warren turned us down, if you know Warren Buffett, you know that when he makes up his mind, he's very firm. He doesn't listen to people. He makes his own decisions, and he stays with them. So I had bugged him a couple of times. I said, Warren, I'm just convinced we can succeed in Vegas. There's no question about it in my mind. He says, you're an optimist, Bill. He said, and you're a wonderful optimist, but that's fine. And then I finally picked out Boise, Idaho, and he turned me down again. And I said, Warren, there's a lot of Mormons in Boise, Idaho, and they'll support us. And then he came back. He said, no, we're not going to Boise, Idaho. We're not going to do that. So finally one morning I was in the shower, and this inspiration hit me, and I said, we've got to move. We've got to expand. I've got to see whether our model will succeed outside of Utah. That's the most important, one of the most important things in business I can do right now. I think it will. I think we got the right model. With the appliances, the electronics, the carpeting, the rugs, the furniture, and the type of systems, our credit program, and all we'd put together. Well, one morning I was thinking about it, and I said, I've got to do something really out of the box, or we're not going to do it. He's not going to move us out, and we're going to be static. We're not going to expand or grow, keep growing like we are. So I called one morning, and I said, Warren, I'd like to talk to you about Boise, Idaho. And first time he was ever gruff with me, he said, Bill, we've already talked about Boise, Idaho. And I said, well, Warren, let me tell you what. I'm going to make you a proposition you cannot turn down. I will personally buy the land. I will personally build the building. And in 6 months, if we're not successful, we'll close it. We'll walk. I'll take the loss. He said, okay.
What did he have to lose?
Yeah.
It was all on your shoulders.
All on our shoulders.
And you were buying that Boise location because you wanted to expand, continue to being innovative as a company, but you also wanted to show him how the no Sunday policy would work.
And I did say, and we'll be closed on Sunday. He knew that. He said, okay, if we can't do $30 million, we'll close it. I said, all right. He said, if we can do $30 million, I'll pay you 4% of gross sales. I'll lease it from you at 4% of gross sales. And I said, well, Warren, I'm going to give you one better. If it's really successful, I told him in the meantime I wanted 6 months. If we can't succeed in 6 months, we'll close it. And I said, I'll tell you one better. If we're really successful, I'll sell it back to you, the company, exactly what I paid for it. I won't charge them any interest or anything. He said, okay. You never know what's going on the other phone. He may have had some guy talking about $1 billion deal or something, and here he's talking to me about a little store. So he said, okay, and he hung up. And I went into to a staff meeting, and I said, we are going to Idaho. We got to go buy the land. We got to get going, and we're going to go to Boise, Idaho. So that's what we started on, and it was very interesting.
And after 6 months?
After 6 months. Well, actually, it was crazy. Well, let me tell you what. A guy came in to sell me some land up there, and I'd looked at all the demographics. I was busy as you could possibly be, and it was a perfect location, and the price was right. But I wanted to go up and look at it, but I never had the time to do it, to even fly up in Boise and back a day. So I went ahead and bought it without seeing it. And then, I mean, I think this again, the Spirit told me it's okay. So then I went up and looked at it, and my physical eyes said, uh-oh, it's in a hole. I don't like the looks of it. I mean, that land it's down there. I mean, sure, it's a pasture. It's a horse pasture.
But you had prayed about it, and the answer was yes, earlier.
Yeah, but I said, okay, team, if you can find a better piece of property, I'll buy it, and I'll keep this. Well, they looked and looked, and I went back up again and looked at about 3 more. There was nothing as good as this. But it turned out to be perfect. I mean, you come up over that hill, and you see that beautiful white building and all that, parking lot in front of it and the greenery in front of that. It is just a beautiful spot. And it turned out to be a home run. The first, oh my gosh, Warren called me every day. He'd call me Sunday morning. How do we do? How do we do yesterday? And he then called it the Buffett store instead of the Boise store. And
he did that because
it was so successful. And we had a wonderful time. He put it in his annual report, managers.
Kind of a newsletter he communicated with all the other business managers.
Yes, he has his annual report every year, and it's read across the country, all over America. In fact, in Asia, the Chinese love Warren Buffett. He is the greatest guru in the world for the Chinese as far as investments concerned. And
so worldwide readers got to read the part of a man who was had so much conviction.
Here's a management agreement you would never believe or will never hear again, or something to that effect. I've got it. But it was in 1991 and 1990 and 91 is when he put it in there. He ran us about 3 years. We did very well. Well, the store, the first year did $50 million. And
without Sunday, 6 days a week.
It closed on Sunday. Went up to 85, actually did 85 million about 3 years later.
So you defied Warren Buffett's predictions. And then, even though you said he's immovable and doesn't like to change his mind, he changed his mind on Vegas?
He did. And then after we got it going real good, I said, okay, now. Well, he did tell me. They called me about 2 weeks later, and he said, Warren, Bill, I've been thinking about that. No one's ever made me an offer like that. And he said, I'm taking advantage of you. And I said, no, you're not. I said, I'm willing to do it. And I said, if it's not successful and it shouldn't fall on the company, I should take the loss myself. And I would be willing to. But I said, I'm so convinced that it'll be successful, I'm willing to do it. And he said, well, And he said, it's all downside for you? And I said, no, it isn't. I said, in fact, I'll tell you what, if we're really successful, you'll probably let me go to Vegas, won't you? He said, oh, okay, all right, well, okay. And then when it was so successful, then he was very excited about going to Vegas.
So there was an upside for you. If you could prove your policy,
yes,
then you would have his support for you to move in.
And then when we built the first store in Vegas, it was immediately successful, like the Boise one was.
I wanted to follow up on that. The Vegas store became the most successful store of the R.C. Willey enterprise. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you were right.
Yes.
That still small voice had told you Vegas was the place. At that time it
was. And then when we opened the first store, it was in Henderson, Nevada. And when he was talking to the press, he came down for the grand openings. He's awful supportive, and he's a wonderful man. Anyone would just love to spend time with him and be with him. In fact, it's amazing. Every year he offers himself for a lunch for charity, and it usually goes for a little over $1 million. People pay $1 million
just to have lunch.
Yeah, for 4 people to have lunch with Warren Buffett. And this year, well, the year before last, it was a fellow from China again, and he paid $1.5 million. This year it was $1.6 million. Now, when I had the picture taken on the front of the book, I flew over to Omaha, and I took him to lunch, and it cost me $28.
So you still think you're a good
Yeah,
salesman,
we
aren't you?
spent probably an hour together, so I got a deal.
Well, it seems to me what a deal you've had throughout your whole life. And when we hear about the story of the American dream,
it was the
where
American
you go
dream.
rags to riches. What is the story of the American dream? What did you learn from that? What do you tell people who want to do and live a life like you've lived?
Well, number one, it starts out with patience and hard work. And I personally think these decisions that I made that turned out very well, like moving to Boise, being able to risk that, that decision, the decision to go here, to go there, to add this, I think we're all listening to the Spirit, inspiration. And I think if you don't do that, and if you do that and you're living properly, I really think you get that type of an inspiration.
When you say you're listening to inspiration, it sounds like you had such a busy life and worksheets and balance sheets on your shoulders. Where did you find time to find that quiet moment to reflect on what would be the wisest decision to make for the enterprise and for the family?
Well, those quiet moments, I do a lot of my deciding in the shower. I probably use a lot more hot water than I should. Probably one of my sins. Just get in the shower and start thinking about this and that. And but you're always, some of you don't pay any attention to, and sometimes you make some decisions that you have to reverse and change, but they're not serious. The major ones, like, when we hire people, we try to look at them and say, is that a good person? We obviously, we can't just say we will only hire LDS people, but we always like to hire good return missionaries. We like to hire people that have integrity. We like to hire people that are honest and sincere, and it does, it does really pay off. I think you've got to offer a service to a consumer. You got to give them something better than everybody else is giving them, if you can, to be better, to be the best you can be in your field. Number one. Number two, you need to be in a field that's, it's kind of like if you're investing in the stock market and you're LDS, you're not going to buy a tobacco stock or a liquor stock or an alcohol stock or a gambling stock. You just don't feel comfortable with that type of thing.
So be prepared to do business in a field that is actually respectful of your own personal morals and beliefs.
Right, yes, where you're not destroying the environment. You're providing consumers with a better life, a better interior environment. So those are some of the things. And then it really is, in fact, Warren uses a slogan. He is very high on integrity. He says integrity is always the best policy. Sometimes doesn't look like it in the short term, but always in the long term. And you need to have good heroes that won't let you down. And most of those have been church leaders, parents. R.C. Willey, I thought, was a great mentor to me. People that you respect. And
I wonder if that has to do with, since that's so important of you, having heroes, and some of those heroes being family members, if that's why you say your favorite scripture is found in the LDS Book of Mormon in 1 Nephi, the very first verse of the very first chapter.
Yep, that's right. I was born of goodly parents, and I think that you need to be true yourself. In other words, I think, I guess it was an old slogan that used to be, I'd rather have my son come home in a casket than disgrace, the church. And I think you have to live your life the way you want to be true to your family, true to your wife, true to your business partners. I've had opportunities in business when I could have taken advantage of people. I've had opportunities when I could have taken their homes. I've never done that. When they couldn't pay me or couldn't pay an obligation, I've just said, look, I'll do the best I can, and I'm certainly not going to take anybody's home. I'm not going to, cause any hardship on them. So I'm an easy mark.
And so integrity for you, there was no compartmentalization. You didn't have a separate Bill Childs for your business, a separate Bill Childs who was a father, a separate husband. You wanted to have integrity in every area of your life.
Every area. You wanted to be who you say you are and who you are. I just finished reading Larry Miller's book, and Larry was a wonderful friend, and of course, he's a friend of so many people. But so much admiration for him and his integrity. We were on a bank board together, and he taught down at the Y, taught a class, and he'd always, not always, but a number of times call me when he's coming home and say, "Bill, are you going to be there?" "Yep. I just want to talk for a few minutes." We'd stop and we'd chat. And, I didn't have any idea, some of the things he'd gone through and was going through, but we always had something in common to talk about. But a man of really integrity.
Our program is called Why I Believe. So there's a perfect opportunity to ask you why you believe in the importance of integrity.
Well, I guess it boils down to the fact that maybe you're born with that particular type of a spirit that, I have my younger son is so kind and considerate. And, he is the kind of guy that looks at everything and said, "That's not fair," or "That's fair. This is something. Why are they doing this? How could they ever do that?" And I keep saying, yes, how could you ever let your family down and do some things? You read about people that maybe are living a double life or do some things that shouldn't be doing, and especially in the business world. I had a friend of mine that was involved with Mr. Madoff, and he made off with his money too. and I keep thinking, how could anyone do that? How could you cheat people? But I think we used to have back at the Visitor Center a series called Why I Believe. And I've often thought about that. But all you have to do is look at the order in the universe, this habitable earth that we have, and the fact that we can breathe oxygen now, and that we have gravity, and that we have seasons, and that we have a rotation of the earth, and all the things that make it habitable for people, and the millions of different plants and animals. And so, it was no problem for me to talk to people that said they're agnostic or said they were. Every now and again we get some that were not very smart and said they were atheists. And I said, how in the world can you ever not believe? And if you believe, that there is a purpose in life, that we lived before, and mortality is here, and the next step of life is immortality, and hopefully eternal life, you just automatically, it's an easy sell. And being on that mission, it was so important for me, I was so proud to be able to talk about the gospel and the principles. And people would usually, shake their head, and they, and then, of course, you look at the examples. I look at the examples that in our ward, and the wonderful people that are there, and what they are willing to do, and how they're so supportive, and the bishopric and the Relief Society. We had a Relief Society president that I'd say 5 nights out of the week she's out doing things, and you think, oh, aren't those the people you want to be with and associate with?
And isn't that integrity in action?
Yeah, and that is all integrity. They're doing things that they believe and that they're converted to doing. It is just a wonderful experience. But when it comes to business, there is no other way, in my opinion, if you want to really build a business. And that's why I had the book built, How to Build a Business Warren Buffett Would Buy, because there's a man that does have high integrity. And he is just a wonderful person to be with, and he is so honest, and his integrity is so strong that it's a mesh. We fit perfectly. And I guess that's why we become pretty good friends.
And I guess why it was so humbling for you to find out that Warren Buffett absolutely believed in your business and in your leadership as well.
I think that is. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I don't know how I've been so blessed. I really don't. And hopefully you're always hoping you can do something more. What am I going to do in life? What am I going to do when I grow up? Can I make a difference? Someone, someplace. And one of the things that the reasons I had the book written was the fact that I thought I could help young people, where they could learn patience, and they could learn integrity, and they could learn honesty, and they could learn a little bit about debt, and learn about making good decisions, and making decisions for not just today but tomorrow, to be conservative in their business operations, and to build, block upon block,
to build businesses and build lives that
and
they
their
can be
life,
proud of.
yes, and definitely your life, which is the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bill Child, the chairman of R.C. Willey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's been an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I hope that someone might get something of benefit out of the discussions we've had. I have had a wonderful life. It's been the American fulfillment of the American dream, and thank you very much. I feel very fortunate to be blessed in many ways. A wonderful family, having a wonderful wife, and having had one that passed away that was adorable, and so my life couldn't have been more richly blessed. And I am very grateful to our Heavenly Father for all that He has blessed me with.
Thank you so much. You've been listening to Why I Believe in Integrity on the Mormon Channel. I'm Rebecca Cressman, and to share your story with the Mormon Channel, email us at radio@ldschurch.org. For more information on this program, or to see pictures of those who are interviewed, visit our website at radio.lds.org.